Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Kathy Oneto. Kathy is a strategy consultant and advisor, an executive and work-life coach, helping clients turn strategy into action and helping professionals build fulfilling, long-lasting careers. Over the course of her career, Kathy's worked on the client and agency sides with Fortune 500 and entrepreneurial companies and has been a partner to C-suite and senior leaders. Integrating her two worlds, she brings a strategic approach to life and career. She is the founder of Sustainable Ambition and the host of the Sustainable Ambition podcast, which offer content and tools to support professionals building a fulfilling career from decade to decade. Her writing has been featured in Fast Company, Media Post, and Branding Magazine, and she has spoken at business schools, including Berkeley, Haas, and Duke University. Please join me in welcoming Kathy Oneto. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
I am happy to have you here, and thank you for joining us from your home office in San Francisco, California.
Yes.
So tell us, Kathy, you know that Work from the Inside Out is all about the journey that we've been on in our careers. And as we just introduced you, you've definitely had a journey with some twists and turns, and it sounds fascinating. We're going to get into it, but take us back to some of those earlier years and tell us about the younger Kathy. Not that you're old now, but take us back.
Sure. I think I'll start when I was 15 years old and thinking about where I wanted to go to college and what I wanted to major in. I was a little nerdy in the sense that I was trying to figure it out. That's my analytical self, trying to figure it out in the moment at 15, going through a college book that had a listing of colleges and along with that, each college's majors and what they tended to focus on. And I was looking through these lists, circling things, trying to identify what is it that I want to do with my life. And it started there really, and just trying to figure myself out.
Yeah.
And that was the start of things. And things kind of grew from there.
Well, first of all, some of us here remember what those college books were like. They were those big, thick, thin papered, soft cover books that had just about every college and university in them, describing, as you said, the different majors and programs of study and the description of the campuses and admissions procedures and all of that. I remember those books. And it was kind of fun to kind of pour through them and see what different schools offered. And at 15, you were already having a vision of what you wanted for yourself. I'm curious, as you recollect on that time, were there certain things that you started to form in your mind about, at least at that point, that really attracted you? Did that help you to start to think about what directions you might want to go in?
I think as I reflect back on it now, it's an interesting lesson about what I have started to think career journeys are for people. I personally don't believe in, or let me say it this way, I don't think the best advice is to tell people, follow your passion, because the majority of us do not have a singular passion. Some of us do. And if you do, great.
Yeah.
But for many of us, we do not. And it ends up resulting in this passion paralysis, or even a passion paradox, where you start to follow your passion and then it now is no longer your passion because it's your work. And so for me, as I reflect back on it, it was interesting actually preparing for talking with you, Tammy, because when I pause and think about my journey, just say from that moment to landing at the college that I landed at, to my first job out of college, one of the things that I think is so important is paying attention and following your interests and curiosities. And so getting back to your question of, well, did pouring through this book help me? It helped me some. It helped me start to identify areas that I might be interested in or that I might want to lean into. But what also helped me on my trajectory, and I realize now, was that I was paying attention to things that caught my interest and that held my attention. Mm-hmm. I happened to stay at a somewhat young age, which is interesting, at a bed and breakfast. I don't remember why, but I loved it. I loved the experience. And for some reason, I thought I might want to do hotel and restaurant administration. So what did I do? Well, as people advise, and I continue to advise, you got to test things out. You got to try it, and you have to go have an experience. So I had an opportunity in high school to go behind the scenes and shadow somebody at a hotel. I had questions about that experience, to be honest with you. I was kind of like, I don't know if I love this, but I still held on to that idea. And I ended up applying to Cornell and wanting to go to their hotel and restaurant administration program.
Well, you didn't fool around then, because that's one of the best schools in the country for that.
Correct. I got in, but I was not able to afford it. And so, but here's the thing. I didn't give up on that idea quite yet. So I went my first year to UC Davis, which is a great school here in California. And while I was there, I, again, tested something out. I actually worked at a local bed and breakfast, and I really enjoyed that. Cooking breakfast in the morning for people. That was a little difficult, I'll admit. And even cleaning rooms. Yes, I actually didn't mind that. And then I also worked with the catering services to test that out as well, which I did not like. So I was testing things out along the way. But one of the reasons I looked at Cornell as well is, for some reason, sometimes you have things that caught your interest, you know why. Sometimes you might have an interest in this case, and I can't remember why, Tammy, but for some reason, I really wanted to go back east for school. I just wanted to have a different experience.
Now, let me ask you something. I actually have more than one thing to ask. So I'm going to go back to the 15-year-old for just a moment, even though I love where you're going with this. So you're 15, you're pouring through this. So there's already this part of you that is just curious, it sounds like, about different pathways people take, different ways. You were just ready to go. And so I'm curious if that 15-year-old, because I think a lot of 15-year-olds or even 16, 17-year-olds think that they're supposed to know what they want to do, and that one thing is going to be the thing they major in and the thing that they're going to do for work, and maybe go on this sort of linear path. I'm wondering if you had that kind of model or expectation in your mind at 15.
I don't think I knew it all. And I so agree with you, Tammy, that I think that is the expectation that, frankly, many of us hold. If we're 15, if we're 25, if we're 35.
I think so.
And I think it's an expectation we need to break. So
right.
I don't know.
And most of us do, right? Most of us break it whether we want to or not. And some of us realize we're breaking it, and some of us think we're deviating from the norm, when in fact, it is the norm, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So that 15-year-old was just exploring and still being somewhat analytical. And I'm blown away. Like you shadowed someone in a hotel as a teenager and made some took some options and choices about going to school, UC Davis. I just think this is great. I mean, I was just also reflecting on how, some people go off to school and their parents tell them, just focus on your studies, just focus on your studies. And I was not one of those people, actually. I did as many internships as I could because I thought, and I think this is sort of what you did, is experience things, try things out, right? And that's what you were doing. So I know I kind of interrupted you, but keep going now.
Oh, that's okay. I think it's so important to emphasize this point that you're making, which is have experiences and expose yourself to things. And that's what I continue to do. And it's a great transition, Tammy, to where I was going, because from Davis, it wasn't my cup of tea. It's a great school. It wasn't a fit for me. And like I said, I realized I wanted to be in a bigger space or a bigger city. And so I went and looked at UCLA, but I really wanted to go to school back east. And I took a leap of faith. I ended up at the University of Virginia. It was an amazing school. I absolutely loved it. And I'm a little bit, again, geeky in the sense that I'll say I had a phenomenal education. It is just such a good school. And what led me there was that I held to my commitment of I really wanted to get to the East Coast. I decided to broaden what I was going to study. Instead of doing hotel and restaurant administration, I studied I studied business, and they have a phenomenal undergraduate business school there. And it was a bit more affordable than an Ivy League. And so it fit the bill. And I got in, and the only reason the school was on my radar is because I had a good friend in high school who had been a page in DC, had the UVA book or pamphlet at his house one day. And I said, what's UVA? Tell me about this school.
Interesting. Huh.
And then along with that, I found it as one of the top undergraduate business schools. My mom found an article that said, hey, this is an affordable Ivy. All of this culminated in my very generous parents. I'm the youngest of 5, and who were willing to send me and spend more, frankly. When I went to school, UC schools were a phenomenal deal. And even when I went to business school at UC Berkeley, it was a phenomenal deal relative to today. And so for my parents to be willing to send me back east was phenomenal. And I'm ever grateful for that. And so that was an experience going away to UVA, being exposed to different people, different mindsets, having different worlds presented to me. You don't know what opportunities are available to you unless someone shares them with you.
And so let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So I'm making an assumption, and you know what happens when you assume, right? I'm assuming then that you grew up in California or somewhere in the West. And so you had not only a curiosity about what you were studying and exploring different pathways, but you were curious about living in another part of the country. And so what an opportunity. I love this story already. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I'm loved being able to have the opportunity to experience a different part of the country. I was also curious to live someplace that had a little more history. I know we don't have the history like other parts of the world and the depth of it, but that was something that attracted me. And so also going to Thomas Jefferson's University had some appeal in that it had this depth of character, and not to get overly complicated and get into all the history of that, because that's not what this is about. But it was a great place for me to land and to have an experience and to get exposed. And like I said, a phenomenal education.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so you broadened also from hotel and restaurant management to a more generalized business degree. What kinds of things opened up for you as a result of that? What kinds of things did you discover?
Yeah, it's a good question. I ended up studying finance and management information systems. Now, I said MIS the other day to my husband. He said, that's an old term and it really dates you. I'm like, okay, well, that's what my concentration was. I can't help that. But at that time too, I knew that technology was going to be important. And so I focused on that. And part of the reason I did finance was that I also was just told this is a good combination and it's the hardest thing. So that's why I did it. I don't know that was the wisest way to come at it, Tammy, but the undergraduate business school at UVA is really a great school. And I got great broad learning around business and management. They take an approach like Harvard, where you're doing a lot of case studies. And what I did there, what was really interesting is that my career, I ended up landing in marketing and brand management. And that's the space that I've really spent a lot of my career and I really think of myself now as a strategist. But interestingly, when I was in undergrad, I joined the marketing club, even in my first year at UVA. And I always loved the marketing club and the projects we did. But when I went to go take the advertising class, which was a phenomenal class, it had a great teacher. It was one of these classes that everyone wanted to get into. I ended up dropping it after the first class. There was something about, and it might have been a little hasty, but there's just something about selling and an aspect of marketing that didn't jive with me. And so when I came out of school, but what's interesting is I ended up blending all three of these things, Tammy. So I got so lucky that between my third and fourth years of school, I got an internship at the advertising agency Young and Rubicam. And I ended up being able to be an intern for the CFO of that company at the parent company level at headquarters. And what he was doing was he was putting together for the summer a team of interns to help him with special projects. And I went there. I was the only undergrad. I worked with 3 MBA students from Columbia. And that you were asking, well, how did that open worlds? Well, my eyes were totally open that year. Being able to sit in a room, we all sat together in one room with people that were older than me, that had different life experiences, that were a bit ahead. I had never lived in New York, of course.
I was just going to ask you about that. You must have had to spend the summer in New York. So there's a big, big difference between where you were in Virginia and being in New York City. Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. And that was even a lesson too, Tammy, in the sense that I had never really had New York completely on my radar. And what was interesting, though, is going back, you asked about my childhood. One of the things that I grew up in a suburb in California, in Silicon Valley, and I never really liked it. I didn't know why. I just didn't like the suburban environment. Well, and I told you at Davis, I was like, it's a little too small. I want to be in a big city.
Yeah.
I never even went to visit UVA. I didn't have the money. It just wasn't a norm back then to like, oh, hey, just fly across the country and go like visit a school. So I took a leap of faith and I called the alumni department there and I was like, tell me about UVA. And they told me about the town. I'm like, well, how big is it? I just took a leap of faith. I'm like, I want to go. I'm going. So here I end up landing in a small town of Charlottesville, which is beautiful, but not a city.
Right. There you go. Huh?
So to your point, landing in New York City finally, and I ended up being able to have even what was called an externship, where you got a week to go work with a company. I did that as well. And that was my first exposure to New York. But yes, you're right. I ended up going and spending the summer for the month, living at NYU in their dorms in New York City. And then I ended up going back after that internship back to Y&R and worked with them for 3 years after college. And I was going to share that role ended up blending. So here I am at an advertising agency. And so it's a marketing driven agency, but I worked in finance. And one of my first projects when I worked there was actually helping to implement a financial system and develop some financial and information system tools. So it kind of brought everything together. Yeah. And I just got really lucky in that experience. And again, I worked for some senior level people in finance at a very young age. And then from there, even jumped to working for the CFO of Burson Marsteller, the largest PR firm in the world. And I worked directly for him doing special projects and things of that nature.
Wow. So I want to pick up on something you just said, because there's a number of things you've actually said already here throughout our conversation. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. You said, I just got lucky. And I would say I would probably say it a little differently. You got lucky. You got it. There's a thing about, I've been reading up on luck lately, and there's a lot of things you did along the way, whether you're even aware of it or not, but which you invited that luck into your life. Now, there are always things that are going to be out of our control or beyond our control. However, what I'm hearing is like a thread of openness, curiosity to different experiences, and allowing yourself to step into them and always expanding your experience. Even here you are, finance and management information systems major, and then you join the marketing club. And it's like, that's interesting. Why would you join the marketing club when you're in finance and information systems, right? And so clearly you had a curiosity, or you wanted to expand your range of either knowledge or your social sphere or whatever that was. But I think that's interesting and then you end up, working in an advertising agency, right? And so even though the job that you had really did draw from your major, it still puts you in a certain environment, and you still had to be open to all that. Just like you said, the leap of faith to go to UVA. And the thread that I'm also seeing here is you listened to this is perfect. This is an inside out story, in that, you listened to that voice inside of you that said, I'm not comfortable here at UC Davis. It's a fine school, but it's not the right one for me. And you made the change. Whereas a lot of other people might have just said, you know what? It's what I can afford. I'm here. I'm going to make it work. Nothing wrong with that approach, but that was not what you were going to do. You were going to listen to your inner voice, and you were going to say, I want to go east. Something's telling me I need to go east, to the extent where you were just getting people's descriptions of the campus and the school, and your gut instinct let you go there sight unseen. So I think there's a lot to be said for the connection between following your gut and still putting some thought into it. And then luck does have a way of showing up, or things do have a way of coming together when you continually listen to that voice within you that tells you very clearly what it is you prefer. But we often brush it aside for some kind of logical reasoning that tells us, oh no, you have to, do this other thing because it makes more sense, or other people expect it. And so clearly you had some wonderful support, as you said, from your family too. But I just wanted to point that out, because there were so many things that you did and left yourself open to that invited that luck in. And so it wasn't just luck. It also was just, if we say just instinct, and just that your ears and your eyes and your spirit were wide open to all of that. And you continually stepped into that over and over and over again.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out, Tammy. And I think you are sharing some things that I think are really important for people around thinking about and managing their careers. And just to build on what you were saying, two things that I'll call out. One is, and you're noting it, which is pay attention. Listen to those tiny voices, listen to those instincts. And it's just, you cannot go on autopilot around managing your career and your life. You really can't. And the second thing I'll point out is curiosity, and really continuing to feed that curiosity, not just when you're young, folks. Like, you need to do it all the time. And as I look back, as you're saying, Tammy, as I was even reflecting and preparing for this conversation, if you'll allow me just to share a couple of things about even what I did when I was in New York City, because yes, I landed in those roles and it was a great opportunity to learn, but I also was getting the sense of oh, I don't know if this is the right path for me. And I actually went to my first career coach. And I think that's not so common for people that are 21, 22 years old. And I also had chosen, when I went to New York, I ended up not doing an investment bank path or a consulting path. And so while I worked more than 40 hours a week, I'm a hard worker naturally. I also was not working 80 hours a week or didn't have to be in the office every weekend. And so it afforded me the opportunity to explore and take advantage of what New York City had to offer. And so as I was continuing to figure out, well, what am I interested in? What should I try? I was able to do things like, well, I'm really interested in design, and maybe I should go to the Cooper Hewitt and join the young design group there and go to events where I can get exposure to design. I loved pottery. I don't know what I was going to do with that, Tammy, but I took a pottery class and realized I love buying beautiful pottery, but I don't have to make it.
There you go.
And so I took advantage. I was just reflecting on this, and I just want to share that even one of my last experiences in New York City, I liked baking. I had an instinct or a desire to potentially open either a coffee shop. I even took a class at the new school back then, like how to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to have met these two women, Connie McDonald and Pam Weeks, who own Levon Bakery in New York City, which has now gotten a lot of notoriety. You got to try their cookies. Well, I had met them because I did triathlons and I was swimming up at Columbia. They did triathlons, and Connie and Pam were kind enough to let me come in and work with them. So Connie actually one morning woke up really early, went and did her baking with her at her, like before they started the bakery. She let me experience that. Then when they were opening the first Levon Bakery, they let me come and work for them on Saturdays. And for 3 months, every Saturday I worked for them. I was not very good at operating the coffee machine, but, but I was a good cashier. But here I am, right? I am a college educated person, but I'm wanting to experience this. And man, working 6 days a week, yeah, that's a little exhausting. But what a great opportunity and experience for me to have had, and how generous they were to let me do that with them, to get exposure to what is it to run a business like that and to start a bakery.
Love that. I love that. I'm curious about, I'm using that word a lot. So there you were, so when you were with the advertising agency, you were doing that while you still were with Y&R? You were doing these things?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you were with Y&R, I keep thinking about the soap opera Young and the Restless too, but which it might have felt like that at times. But I'm wondering, when you were with Y&R and you were, dabbling in other things and exploring, some creative options, were you happy at your job? Were you, was there always this sort of sense of wonder about other things in a joyful way, in a restless way? I'm curious what that looked like for you, because, there's a lot of different ways this could be interpreted. I mean, I'm hearing it coming from that you just have always had this sort of sense of wonder, not to take away from the experience you were having on the job necessarily. Because, there are some people who they're never present where they are. They're always looking outside of where they are for something else. And it's like, well, what about where you are right now? Isn't that okay enough? And I'm not hearing that here, that's what was going on, but I'm curious what your experience was.
It's a good question. I think I was content with my role. I am a learner, a core value for me. I mean, it's huge, is growth and learning. And so I've even come to this term recently, this mantra, which is like, choose growth and learning over comfort and certainty.
Ooh.
And that's what as I look back, I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back, that's what I was often doing. Going to UVA by myself, literally getting put on a plane with 4 suitcases and getting settled there and being in a different part of the country, was it easy? No, it was a bit hard. I got through it. And would I change that experience? Never. Was living in New York City easy? Not always. Would I change the experience? Never. And so when we're on growth trajectories, they aren't always, happy dances, but there's of course happiness and joy in there. There's a lot of that. And so, yes, but getting back to the job, I took those opportunities to learn and grow. And I think I was enjoying that. And I think part of what I was exploring too was partly, are these hobbies? Are these, did I really think I was going to become a potter? No, not at all. But there's things that I like to expose myself to different things and kind of just see what does this mean for me? And how do I optimize or find more fulfillment?
Right. So, yeah, I think, and I was just curious to unpack that a little bit more because it sounds like you were looking at these things as potential avenues for work. They weren't just pursuits of hobbies, but they could be. So versus somebody who's interested in finance doesn't usually pursue that as a hobby necessarily, although some people do. So I love this. Choose growth and learning over, I think you said, comfort and certainty.
That's right.
That's going to roll off the tongue nicely. I like that. I might quote you a few times with that. So you were, and you had the opportunity, as you said, whereas a lot of your peers probably from business school at UVA were going the investment banking route and, working that 80-hour week. You had a little more flexibility in your schedule to try out a bunch of different things, and which sounds like so much fun. What made you decide to move on from Y&R and then you went into the PR firm?
Well, Burson Marsteller is owned by Y&R. And so the gentleman that I was working with at Y&R on my first project, he became the CFO of Burson Marsteller and he asked me to join him. Okay. And so it was a very normal, simple transition and just staying really within the larger company. But when I finally left there, I decided to go back to business school. I did not graduate business school and I did not intend to do that. But I think I ended up realizing, hey, there's an opportunity here for me to both. I think there's going to be, I learned there's going to be a benefit to getting a master's degree. I want another chance to kind of deepen my skill sets. So let me go ahead and go to business school. And it was only after that I really ended up landing in my marketing space.
I see. So you decided to go to business school, graduate school full time then. So you completely, yeah.
I did, yes.
And you did that in Berkeley, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So you went back to the West Coast at that point.
That's right.
How long were you in New York total? How many years?
Just 3 years. I wish I didn't come back to California so quickly, but at the time, those were the schools that appealed to me. I wish I did. I knew I tell people I got stuck back in California. It's not a bad place to be stuck, at least from my perspective. But I do wish I experienced another part of the country before I came back. But alas, again, I chose Berkeley as the school that I went to because for me, it aligned to my values and the type of school that I wanted to be at. And it also offered the programs that I was interested in exploring it with more depth. But one of the core things I didn't realize until a few years ago, it's probably been 5 or 10 years now, but Berkeley codified its values. And one of the values it articulates is confidence without attitude. And that's what attracted me to the school, this humility, and this is one of the reason that language literally comes from people who hire from the school that say, this is why we like to hire from there. You guys have excellent students. They're confident, but there's no attitude. And that curation of who ends up at the school and the student body, really you can sense it. And it was something that was appealing to me in terms of the environment I wanted to be in for business school.
So again, your instincts really took you somewhere, your core values. And so in terms of your going more towards marketing. Tell us more about how that evolved.
Yeah, it's interesting. For some reason, I was really somewhat resistant to marketing. Even in business school, I did not major in marketing, and yet many of the courseworks that I took actually supported marketing in some form or fashion, and brand management in terms of where I landed. Again, I had some technology focus because of the times.
Yeah.
But I ended up landing there really interestingly, Tammy. One of my favorite classes, actually, it was my favorite class at business school, was design as a strategic marketing tool.
Ooh.
Loved this class. And so you can see design popping up again. I did end up later in my career working for a strategic global design firm. And where I landed in marketing, again, I came out of school, thinking I wanted to get some general broad base learning. So I started at a consulting firm. And 6 months after I started there, I got laid off because it was weird. It was it was the .com boom at the time. It actually was great, Tammy. I got a signing bonus and I got severance, and that helped me pay off my loans for school. It was beautiful. And so things happen for a reason. And because it was the .com boom too, at the time, Clorox, which hires from MBA schools, tends not to hire mid-career people, tends to prefer to hire people right out of business school. They were losing people. They kept on having people that were jumping to startups. And I had a good friend who had landed there, and she said, I really think this would be a good fit for you, Kathy. And so I interviewed and I got a job. And what appealed to me was the breadth of the work, the type of work that brand management allows you to do. In addition to, and this is a consistent theme, I was drawn to Clorox's values. They have some values that have been the same since the time I worked there, and that really resonated with me. And so I loved that job. This is one example. You were asking me, hey, was I always searching? No, I loved being at Clorox. I loved the learning. I loved my projects. I loved what that allowed me to do. But I also knew that it wasn't probably where I was going to stay for my full career. And so I did end up leaving after about 6.5 years.
Yeah. Well, that's still a good solid amount of time to really, get into something. I'm curious, when you were in consulting, was that, I assume a lot of consulting firms kind of put, new graduates into kind of a slot, and then you move up in a certain way. So it's kind of a generalist kind of path. Is that right? Or were you in a particular division? How did you end up in brand management with the background you had, and you didn't major in marketing for your MBA? So I'm curious how you found your way into brand management then.
Yeah, the program that I had gone into was a new group at the firm that was focused on technology deployment. And so again, I thought I was going to go more a technology route.
Yeah.
And I think that marketing angle was always a little bit there. I'm a very analytical and process-driven person, but there is a part of me that is drawn to consumers and creativity. And so I think that's part of what drew me in the end to marketing. And I think brand management was so perfect because it blends that analytical side and the creative side. It really is a right and left brain kind of job. And the way that role is structured is that it really allows you to be both a general management thinker, a business-minded thinker, in addition to being able to wear a marketing hat and have that creative aspect of one's job. And so it was, again, one could say it was luck, but again, yes, these seeds have been planted over time. And I think my background and or the skill sets that I brought were appealing to Clorox when I interviewed. And perhaps I just interviewed well. I got lucky, but I mean, I was able to.
So it was a convergence of things, it sounds like, but it's not like you had to present some package of transferable, I think a lot of people talk about transferable skills, what color is your parachute kind of stuff. And it sounds like, there was a convergence. Now you also had a friend who worked at Clorox. Is that right?
That's
so
right.
I know that not to say like, oh, your friend got you in. I don't mean it like that, but I think that there is a convergence of things. If you are known by somebody else who is in the company, that helps because it does make you more known or trusted in that way. And there are a variety of things. If you present in a way where it appears your values are very aligned with the company, that can make a big difference because there are a lot of people who show up at an interview who have very, parallel skills and credentials. So what is it that's going to make you hireable? So it sounds like you had a lot of those things, and those things do amount to luck. But that's interesting to hear about that. And it sounds like it was a really good time for you there. And so 6.5 years later, you moved on to what?
I moved on to a startup where I ended up again being in a similar role, but at a tiny company. I joined an incubator where it ended up spinning out 4 separate companies. And what drew me there, I also had an interest in entrepreneurship. As I mentioned, I thought about opening a coffee bar, a bakery, but even having taken an entrepreneurship class in business school. And so I was drawn to that, but also wanted to work on a product that I felt like I could believe in a bit. And again, was a bit purpose driven. So it was a natural food company looking at functional foods. And so that's where I ended up landing and stayed there for 2.5 years and essentially helped to birth a brand and launch it out into the world and launch nationally with Whole Foods and then launch nationally with Safeway. And so it was a great experience to be able to really transfer all of what I had done and learned at Clorox into this startup.
Wow. That's exciting. And tell us more.
Well, from there, after 2.5 years there, what I was really picking up on was that I love the strategy and I love the creation of brands. And I liked brand strategy in particular. And as I mentioned, I have always loved design. When I was at Young and Rubicam, they owned the firm Landor and Associates, which is one of the preeminent design firms. And I had been able to do special projects with Landor and loved what they did. And so I ended up having an opportunity come my way to join a strategic design firm in San Francisco. And so jumped from the startup and ended up in an agency environment. And that was the first time I worked on the agency side. And ended up being there for 6 years as well. Oh,
wow. So you got to really exercise the other side of your brain even more and more. I can almost like envision you going from that analytical part of you, and it really over the years it really evolved over time into more and more creative work.
It's true. I think that I really do dance between those two things. So I'm never going to be a designer. But I think that I really do like a blend of those two worlds.
Yeah. And so tell us about Sustainable Ambition, how you came up with the name and about your podcast and what you're doing today.
Yes. So I launched Sustainable Ambition a little over a year ago. I have been, as you can hear through this conversation, since that time of 15, kind of thinking about, well, how does one think about a career and kind of guide a career over time? Even when I was at business school, everyone applies to business school. They claim they know what they want to do. And then you get there in their first year and everyone says, I don't know what I want to do.
Right.
So I held a career planning session even when I was there. And so this has held my attention over time. I've worked with coaches over the years. And when I even hit 40, even for somebody paying attention, I hit this time in my career where I said, wow, where do I go from here? I've tried all these different things. I'm not quite sure where I want to go. And I started to explore and write about this. And really, this has been, at this point, probably a 6 or more year journey of writing about career transition, how to think about it. And Sustainable Ambition is about how do you craft a fulfilling career to support your life from decade to decade. And I think it's an important thing because we don't talk about how our satisfaction and our ambition can change over time,
Right.
and how it can be impacted by life stage.
Yes.
And there's a second component to it too, which is I think the end goal is more fulfillment with more ease while still being ambitious. And there's sustainable ambition has a component that's over time, but there's also a component that's in the moment. How do we sustain ourselves while still wanting to be ambitious? And how do we stretch ourselves and yet also sustain ourselves at the same time? And so I said, I don't love saying follow your passion, but this is a passion area for me. And it led to launching my website, of course, launching the podcast, and also becoming a coach.
It's like music to my ears. And not only what you said, but just how you just said it in terms of the way it unfolds, the way that, talking to people about their ambition through various stages of their life and how it can change. I love that. Love that. So you're coaching now, and you're also speaking at business schools, and you're writing, correct?
So I do both strategic work. I'm still doing strategic consulting work.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing some coaching, and I am doing the podcast and speaking. Some of those, just to be transparent, some of those speaking roles were in prior times, prior to this time. But yes.
So it sounds like you speak on a number of different topics then, that you're still speaking about strategy, but you're also working in the career space now as well.
That's right.
Yeah. They all go hand in hand, don't they? I mean, when you think about the strategy that you might discuss with somebody in terms of what they're doing with their organization on an individual level, talking to somebody about their career is also strategic.
Absolutely. And what I say is that I really bring a strategic approach to thinking about your life and career.
Yeah.
And it might sound too heavy-handed. Oh my gosh, I have to be strategic about my life and career. It might sound that way, but guess what? Yes, you do. If you want to have some agency in crafting your career and your, frankly, in your life. And, Robert Keegan talks about the stages of adult development, and I'm still digging into this a little bit more, but he talks about how the fact that, 58% of adults operate from a socialized mind, as opposed to like 35% of adults operating from a self-authoring mind.
Mm-hmm.
And only 1% are operating in a self-transforming mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a big leap. I think it's okay, right, early on to be guided by what society might be guiding us to. Listen to those things, but those help, because we're always becoming, we're always learning about ourselves and figuring out where we should go next. And so that socialization can help us along our way. But you need to start learning about yourself and understanding, to your point, look inside and bring it out so that you become more self-authoring, so that you're driven by your own definition of success.
Well, you're preaching to this choir, me, myself, and I, for sure. And I love that you mentioned Robert Keegan's work, because he talks all about how we navigate change, both at the organizational level and team level and individual level, right?
That's right.
It's great work. So what are you up to going forward? What can we be looking forward to?
Well, I'm continuing the podcast. So if folks want to listen in on that, and I am working on some products that I'm hoping to come out with in the coming year, as well as hopefully, like you, Tammy, hopefully there's a book in my future.
Oh, I think there is. I feel that in my bones, Kathy. There's a book in you. If not one, maybe more than one. But this is really exciting. I'm excited about the way, you walk your talk. You're not just telling other people what you think about this, you're living it. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate having you here today. So if you were to give somebody, as you are working with people as a coach now, if you were to give somebody one key piece of advice about making a transition, somebody who's considering what they might want to do as a next step, what would be a key piece of advice that you would give them?
I'm going to go back to follow your curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what holds my attention or interest now. What is a goal that can hold my attention and that calls my attention? And that all fits under this idea of look towards just curiosity. Again, I think passion just can turn people off. It just feels so big. And I think we can also make things too big. And if you're feeling confused or like, I just don't know, look a little bit closer in and start to pay attention and start to track it. Really start to track and take a notebook and keep a list of things that are catching your attention and that you're interested in now.
I love that advice. I think it makes perfect sense. I think when we tell people, follow your passion, it's daunting. And it gives people this idea that they have to come up with something so spectacular that it's almost unreasonable, right? Well, Kathy, thank you so much for being here today. This was absolutely delightful. I love your story. I love what you're up to. And I can't wait for my audience to listen to this interview because there's so much good stuff in here for them to listen to.
Oh, thanks so much, Tammy. It's been a pleasure to be in conversation with you today.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kathy Oneto. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at tammygulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 150. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Perhaps you might be feeling a little stuck. Stay tuned for my new book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles to Design a Career that Fulfills You. It'll be available in January 2022 in print and digital ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent bookstores. If you were inspired by this episode with Kathy, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And please subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd really appreciate reading your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcasts. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear how it's going. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.